Hey, this is Christian Buckley, and welcome to another Digital Sack Lunch. And I'm here today talking with Jon Rivers. And Jon, hello.
Hello, Christian. Thanks for having me on the Sack Lunch. It's fun.
Are you having a late lunch there? I mean, so what's your location for our viewers?
I am actually in sunny Tampa, but actually it's funny. It's sunny Tampa, but it's been raining today. But it actually feels a little bit cooler than where we were last week.
Yeah, and it did rain, and that's what we were in Las Vegas last week for Microsoft Inspire, which is the worldwide partner conference, and it's moved now. I didn't realize they signed a 5-year agreement for that location. So we're going to be going back to Vegas every July because there's no better place to be in the July heat of Las Vegas than at a conference wearing a collared shirt.
Yeah, only 105 in the shade.
Yeah. At least it's dry heat. Yeah.
At least it's dry. Well, at least it's dry compared to where I am. It's probably 90 and it's hot and humid.
But there's a bit of we still had like the monsoon. So my drive home Thursday night last week, I had to pull over for a half an hour. There's a river across the highway, and after watching wreck after wreck after wreck that had just happened, and the police hadn't arrived to all of them, I just said, I'm going to pull off and let this kind of blow over for a while.
When I landed, and the Uber driver said, "Oh, it's monsoon season." I wasn't even thinking about that because I'd just come back off about a month earlier. I'd just come back from a vacation, and it was monsoon season out where I was, and I wasn't thinking about that in Vegas. It's monsoon season, so I was like, "Where did I just fly to?"
In my experience too is that when somebody says that, it's extreme. The 2 other times I've been in where somebody's like, it's monsoon season, and I was traveling. I was actually on a train going from Tokyo to Osaka, and they stopped the train for about an hour because the eye of the storm crossed the track, and we sat there and waited. And I didn't realize how big it was and dangerous it was. And the other time was in the Philippines, and seeing water fill the streets that we had just been driving on that day was it was an interesting experience.
I was out in Sri Lanka, so not too far from the places that you were on about. So they get pretty heavy out there.
Well, so at the conference, so we had a conversation on the last day of the event on Thursday. You did a session on a topic that we kind of sparked a conversation. Of course, I always try to be the good attendee sitting in the audience and raising hand and asking questions and participate. That's me though. Maybe you can talk about what you covered and some of the topics.
Yeah, so I had a session and it was funny because I had my session on the last day, which was after the partner celebration. I'm thinking, I'm going to have a small crowd, but we ended up with a big crowd in the room. We actually got moved to a bigger room, and it was all around social selling. And actually, when I put together the session, it was like, okay, I think I got to take it back to the basics. There's a lot of partners out there that really still don't fully understand what the difference is between social media, social selling, and also social listening. I know all the pieces really go together. So we really focused on social selling. Yep. But of course, we had to touch upon those other items because they're all intermingled. But I think as we got into conversation, some of the conversation we had, some of the questions that came up were, as you're out there and you start reaching out and you start making, should we say, connections and introductions, I think was a powerful one was, how should you connect, right? So, and when should you connect? And I think it all starts.
What's the wrong way to correct it?
Right.
That was one of the comments that I made about, cause I made the comment, you were talking about, connecting with people that are, outside of your, your immediate area, your echo chamber of the the community, and take that leap and connect with people that will then become bridges to other networks, other communities. But that something that I'm seeing more and more are people that I have okay, I'm going to take a leap. I don't know who you are, but it looks like you've got a legitimate experience. You're a real human being. I'm going to connect. And they immediately send that spam email trying to push services or go take a look at this, watch these videos, that kind of thing. My sense is that's the wrong way to do that. There's no relationship other than
Right.
that connection. And most of those people, I immediately go in and unconnect,
Right.
unfollow.
Well, I think right, but I think you need to sort of roll it back a little bit back first of all, right? So I think first of all, I look at it is first you got the first impressions, right? So when you get that invitation, you're looking at it is did that person, how did they ask you to connect? Did you
Right.
already, I mean, so let's just talk about that connection first of all. How did you make that decision that you wanted to connect with them?
Right.
That's always the big one. It's for me is I always want to see a personal note. I don't want to see a pre-canned message. I actually want to see a personal note because that shows that they made an effort. They really are looking at, and 9 out of 10 times the sort of the type of person you're talking about is probably dealing with a pre-can. They haven't paid attention. I know prior to the Inspire conference, I was starting to get some of what used to happen in the sort of the Inspire Connect tool was we used to get some. I hate to
Right.
say this, but the
Yeah.
developers, the developing partners, used to just spam you,
Right.
and it was getting that on LinkedIn instead this year. So they were like trying to connect, but they weren't looking at what you did. They just noticed that you were on there. But I'm a marketing agency. I help partners with social, from social media to social selling. So I'm not looking for someone that a partner.
Engineers for hire. And
I'm not looking for an engineer. Probably the same as you. We're not looking for someone to help us develop an app unless we're going out there to do something like that. But that's very unlikely.
It's very much akin to like the HR, the recruiter that says, hey, like in the profile, the fact that the word SharePoint appears and hey, we're
Right.
looking for developer resources. Like,
Yeah,
did you
same
read
principle.
my profile? Like,
Right. Well,
I'm not an
exactly.
engineer.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, so that it's that criteria. So if they don't send that personal, that's one. If they get past that piece, the next piece I want to do is look at who they are. And if you don't have a photo, to me, that's that you're already losing that personal. And that was one of the things I talked about in that session, if you remember, is that I want to look at you. I also think about if you're at a conference or wherever you are networking, that face-to-face still should be the same online.
Right.
Even if you don't have that personal invitation and you still send an invitation, I still may go and look at who you are because something may intrigue me about who you are, and I start looking at profile. And if you have a photo, that will get you past maybe step one, and I'll go down. And then your profile may start, and it needs to engage me. And it's all down to that first impression, right?
And that same, I think, for the same reasoning why I will not connect with like somebody approaches like as a brand. If their name and their face, if it's like it's a company and they're talking as an individual, like look, before I would ever engage with the brand and company around that, it's about the relationships with the individuals or whether they're the right people to connect with in the first place. And so I automatically say no to any brand that reaches out and wants to connect. Might be a person with very valuable products or services that I might legitimately be interested in. We'll never know because I don't know. It's like having that anonymity. Could be a group of people, and I don't want to go and deal with that. I want to have a conversation one-on-one.
Right. Well, exactly. And I'm starting to see that as well. I mean, is if they don't pass all that criteria, I won't connect with them. The other one I've done a number of times, if they sort of are on that borderline, I'll actually, before I connect, I'll actually reach back out and say, okay, tell me why. Why do you want to connect? If there's something there that I feel like they may be beneficial to connect, but I'm not 100%, I'm nearly there, and I can see a benefit, but then there's just something, right?
Right.
I don't want them to try to sell to me, but so I'll reach back, and if they don't respond to me within a short period of time, then I'll knock them off because at the end of the day, they're probably spamming. Again, it goes back to that piece is they're probably just out there trying to connect to lots of people at the same time. If they can't respond in a short period of time, then you're probably not on their radar. They're not focused, and that's a good excuse to knock them off. But I think if you go back to that original question is, I'm the same. If someone starts to try to we connect, and then they start trying to sell me services 9 or 10 times,
Right.
I'll knock them off the list as well. and then try it. But at the end of the day, it's first of all, connect, make a relationship. I mean, do you walk into let's just take Inspire. Did you walk up to someone and try to sell your services in the first 5 seconds? Or did you build a relationship?
There are a couple, yes. No, actually, I mean, there was already a conversation and
right.
dialogue happening before that, but yeah.
Right, exactly. So why is it any different on social, right? So you got to think of what you do face-to-face, and networking and connection shouldn't be any different. You just use the tools, the same principle.
Yeah, no, it's whether there's science behind the phrase "wine and dine me" and tell me you love me before you make a commitment. Yeah,
right. At the end of the day, it's a bit. I mean, I also think of going to events like the IMCP.
Yeah.
Right, and where I've seen people come into the IMCP and expect to come to an IMCP meeting, and within the first meeting expect to walk away with huge deals. Well, hang on a minute. Have you built relationships? Did you get to know anyone? Well, it's not going to happen overnight. You got to build those relationships.
Well,
people trust you until you build the relationship.
There is, I think, so a slight nuance to that is that you want to be careful not to close yourself off from potential opportunities. There, like I had a conversation years ago with a manager where we had kind of a very frustrating relationship. And one of the things, I was participating in a community event and did a lunchtime. So I'll just preface that by saying that it was during my lunch that I gave up to go participate in this networking opportunity internally at this very large company based in Redmond, Washington. And so I was actually like one of the facilitators that was sitting and doing like a table topic around this thing. And the comment for this manager was that, I don't see that there's any benefit to our team by having you participate in that. And my response was, first I said, knowing that it would very much rile up this manager, I said, look, I'm not so selfish as to think that I have to receive some benefit out of every one of these interactions. It benefited others that I participated, shared my knowledge, those experiences. And so sometimes I look at these connections. Yeah. And I'll just say that manager employee relationship was not good
right
after that, but I was right.
Yep.
But anyway, but I think that sometimes you do have to also look at that and say, hey, look, there may not be a benefit to me out of this, but it's a legitimate request. I understand how, I might be able to help them in their role. And because you never know who they know and what relationships second tier that you'll unlock by connecting with that person. And so that's why I think, to your point, if somebody reaches out and their note might be very simple, be like, hey, I just read your article on this, love that, I'd love to connect, or I saw you speak at this event, or we met briefly, all of those, I automatically connect with those people because it's a legitimate thing where they see that value, even if I may not see that immediately.
Right. Well, exactly. I think that's what you got to look at, is you got to look sometimes through the filters, and so like not necessarily to say, okay, I'm not going to connect. I think the other one that a lot of people have done for a long time on LinkedIn is said, I'm only going to connect to people I know or I've met, right?
Yep.
You got to look past that. If you want to be successful and use LinkedIn to its full power, you've got to start looking outside of the box and start connecting with people that are outside of probably your comfort zone. Because that's what really the power of the tool is. And that meets into what you just said, is start looking at the profile, what benefit, and don't just necessarily look at it today, look at it maybe down in the future. I'm more of a giver than a taker, because I know that at some point it will come back, because it's just one of those things. If you give, at some point you will get paid back. You may have to give 5 times before you get 1 time back, but it will pay back at some point.
Right. And I'd say that besides the examples that we started with of people that just kind of spam, and I think They don't take the time to develop the relationship and then immediately have an ask. Look, there are some legitimate cases where I might connect with the people and turn around, but it's not this canned, bold, like, look at what we're doing. But it might be that, hey, I want to connect for this specific reason. I'm trying to connect with more people in your company around this topic. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, it might be research that I'm doing for another client, and I'm trying to, find experts in this space. But you do have to be, I think, if you're authentic about why, then 9 out of 10 times those people will be like, oh yeah, hey, look, I'm happy to connect. It's a real thing. But if you find yourself cutting and pasting responses, then you might want to pause and reflect on how you're leveraging the platform.
Right, but if you think about the whole social selling journey, it's not always straight to that, I have to connect to you, right?
Right.
There are multiple ways that I could have, try to build a relationship with you. I mean, I know we're connected, but at the end of the day is I could have tried to have teased, you could have posted something and I could have commented on it.
Yep.
That's already starting to build a relationship and building your trust there. I could have then said, okay, I've written another blog article that maybe you have interest in. I could have posted that to you. I've already started to build that trust and relationship with you. That way, by the time I get to actually send you a message to connect, you already know who I am, right? So it's not that cold. We've already got that bit more relationship going on. You may have already checked out the services I do. So therefore, when I hate to say it, but when I do try to slam down your throat some services, maybe you're not as push back on them, because maybe at that point you've looked and maybe they are a little bit more of interest because you've now got a little bit more engaged. And I think that's the key. You've got to know when to connect is timely as well. It depends on, I think there's two aspects, isn't there? Are you using it in trying to sell something to someone, or are we just connecting because we want to network together? Right.
Which are both valid, and
right.
Just be clear about those things, and just say, hey, you've got experience around this that I don't have that. I just think it'd be good that we might be able to help each other in the future. Again,
right.
Those are legitimate reasons to go and connect.
Exactly.
That's why, to your point, it's important to state that when you're reaching out to connect, and not just do the, hey, you're somebody that I really admire, I'd like to connect with you, whatever the canned responses are that are in the tool to connect.
Yeah, go and look at someone's profile. Go and research them. You should know enough about that person before you try to connect.
And I've got kind of three things I'd like to discuss. I mean, one, it'd be great if we back up a bit and you kind of frame out what what social selling is and what's covered in that. Another topic that you kind of touched on, I think that we can discuss after you do that description, is around the increase in the desire of organizations to understand the value of their efforts. They want to be able to do the attribution of the various steps and interactions to be able to realize, okay, what is the high value? What are the high value activities that led towards a deal, a sale, and that side of things.
Right.
Well, why don't we start with those two? And so maybe like a description, like how do you define and you describe to customers about social selling?
I always like to take it back to the basics, right? I always like to try to keep it simple. So when you think of social media, so let's just define social media. Social media is more of, you're out there, you're putting messages more to many, right? So you're sending it to many people and you're hoping you're going to engage with someone, all right? Social selling is more of trying to interact with an individual. So it's one-to-one, whereas so social selling is a one-to-one, social media is one-to-many. And then you've got, in between that, you've got the social listening. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to listen more to help you understand. So yes, listening is needed for social media as well, but you need to be more listening to be successful with social selling.
Yep.
Right. So at the end of the day, you're really getting into that one-to-one engagement in a social selling standpoint.
Right. And it's, I think that where social media, again, is more of a, it could be conversational, but from a marketing standpoint, the social media is more about the promotion. It's a channel to get the information out there. Where social selling, that then assumes that there is a purpose, there's intent, and there is a process. I mean, I think on the sales side, like funnel activity, I know it's not popular to talk about funnels anymore in sales. It's still there. It's just implied, but it's important to drive towards those calls to actions that ultimately that conversion down to a sale. And so there's that intent behind those steps.
Exactly. Right.
So as far as the attribution aspect of that, I mean, as you think about, again, advising customers, talking about social selling and the techniques and things that they go and do, and do you talk to them a lot and spend time putting those metrics, the measurements in place to be able to understand the attribution of each of those different activities? How in-depth do you get with attribution?
I think it depends on each partner that we work with and how really ready they are. It's an interesting thing of, as you work with different partners, how ready are they really to get into the weeds of social selling? So some of it's really of just sometimes baby steps of trying to gradually take them off of, or adding a little bit more than just social media, gradually stepping stones to getting them to start some of the process of getting into social selling. So it's not like, okay, do everything you need to do on social selling. So for example, one of the big things in social selling, yes, in social media a little bit, is showing how much you're a domain or an industry expert, right? So when you're out there and you start engaging with your audience, is making sure that you have an understanding of what, of course, hopefully you understand what you're selling, but showing that you understand it with sharing maybe curated content from you as a person, not your company. I think that's another big difference with social media. Is typically it's your company that's sharing content. Now in social selling, it's more of you sharing. Now your company may be telling you what to share, but you as a person is starting to share, and you're really focusing that content down to what your prospective clients are looking for. Likewise, that you may, if you're taking curated content, right, you're going to be putting that out, but you also want to start looking into more of content you can create. And that can come in different formats as well. Like I think I said about, maybe I'm trying to interact with you. Maybe I don't go that full blown and say, okay, can we connect, please? I may start to see that you are talking about a certain industry, and I can see that you're starting to respond to certain blogs and stuff like that. For me, maybe I need to also start interjecting into those comments and conversations. That is still content, right? Maybe I'm starting to pose questions in there. Maybe I'm putting answers in there, and my thoughts about that industry as well. That's still content. What you also then, as you start to take that, and maybe if you start posing questions, you can take that to the next level, take those questions and actually start creating maybe blogs, white papers, and all the other types of marketing materials that we can. And now you have the next level of content that a lot of partners are sometimes scared to know where to start. And now you can start posting that information and show, again, you're that domain expert in that industry. So those are the aspects we try to like baby step a partner through, getting them there. And of course, then all the steps up to, okay, personas and understanding who is your target audience, right? At the end of the day, so you get some partners say, well, we touch every single industry. Well, that's great. So we now have 10,000 prospects you're going to go after. That's not going to work in social selling. right? We've
And,
got to
and,
narrow that.
and even if you did have a solution and offering that cut across every single industry, you're not trying to reach every single role in every
Right.
single industry, and then you just need to focus your content, that customer journey, depending on those different roles. And I advise customers, I mean, just generically to say, like, what is a persona or these roles, but like the executive level, the middle manager, and maybe the end user, the
Right.
broadest sense, where, who is the actual one who writes the check? It may be an executive, but they don't make a decision unless the managers bought into that and the end users support that. Or, there's some combination of those things. Understanding what that journey is, what pieces need to be there, and then, to your point, a combination of curated content that's like from the community, from experts that are out there that you are, and I always like to throw in there as someone who writes a lot of content, that you have the permissions to be able to use within
Right.
the context. But then as you start to see the types of content and the keyword usage and how people are finding your site and are reading through, and which pieces are performing, you can then start shaping, okay, the executives within this they're going towards this, and then we're going to start shaping customize our original content to fit that path to perform better where the market is coming through. And
Right.
This is what it looks like for managers. Here's where they come together. That's a key part of the attribution effort of going in and assessing, doing an inventory. Look, I'm you're the same way. I'm an inbound marketing guy. I'm a content marketing expert. I'm a big believer in that because modern marketing is about content marketing.
Right.
The old models are broken, are gone, and this is what it's about. And if you are not getting to that level where you are, and don't get hung up on the attributions and measurements aspect of it, initially you don't need to start with that, with a full dashboard of how everything in real time is performing. But use your gut, your knowledge of your space, and start watching that, and you'll refine those things over time.
Yeah, don't be scared. Yeah, don't be scared to make mistakes.
You need to start, and you're going to learn, and it will change. It's not like you form that, and a year later it's exactly the same.
Right. I'm sure you've done it before. It's like you write a piece of content and you think, okay, this is an unbelievable piece of content. You put it out there and no one reads it, right? And you put out another piece of content, that's okay. And it gets...
Everybody wants that.
Right, and everyone wants it. So at the end of the day, sometimes you have to play around with sometimes. And then I think that's also a key there as well. So that's why don't be scared to go and try different things. Also, don't be scared to sometimes, I sort of say the word repurpose, but when you put it out there, don't be scared to maybe go in, if you're going to put it out in a message, change it up a bit in the sense, let's just go back and change it in, say, a social media term. Change it up in like an A/B testing mode, right?
Right. And I think you're exactly right. I mean, you need to be doing that all the time,
right?
So that whether you have a new campaign that's out, or even around the content, and it may be that it's fantastic content, but they can't get past the title,
right? Or the image you're using,
right?
Yep. So
exactly,
it could be a lot of those things.
Look, you're not going to be able to go out and test everything. I always say that I've worked with clients and past companies where they freak out that, it's like, there was this typo in the body of the blog post. And I'm like, look, we didn't just print up 5,000 full color bleed brochures for a show with a glaring typo. It's a blog post, change it,
right,
and fix that.
Yep.
But the next level of that is saying, hey, we really see this as a core message, and we're not getting, it's below our average readers on the first day of this. What's off on this? And then maybe recalibrate that to the image, the title, how you went and positioned that new content, and maybe switch things up. You're not changing the core of what the content is.
Right.
It's just, you're not going to convince people if you have those pieces wrong.
Right.
When you push.
Right. And get it out there multiple times. I mean, we're going back in what I class as a little bit more social media, but the mistake I think a lot of people make out there is they put it out once and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. Repurpose it, right? We had that conversation.
You and I talked about that and some of the tools that are out there.
That, right? Repurpose it as much as you can. I mean, if it's timeless content,
I call it evergreen. Yeah, evergreen.
Keep on using it. At the end of the day, that's why. At the end of the day, if it's the evergreen, timeless, at the end of the day, your next batch of prospects, they don't know you've already used it.
Right.
And I think that's the key here. So those are some of the things we try to, like I said, we try to take our clients through the baby steps all the way up. I think that's why, again, to go back to Inspire, why I took the session to more of the basics instead of trying to take them right up to the advanced, because I don't think a lot of people were there yet. I remember doing a session back earlier in the year talking about Sales Navigator, which is a big piece. I think if you're going to do successful sales, social selling, you need to put Sales Navigator into the picture. I think at the end of the day, without it, I think it's very tough to be successful. And in the room, I would say 60-70% of the people, and this was a Microsoft partner community, they didn't even know what Sales Navigator was. And it was like, that just changed my whole tune at that point, because after that it was like, it put me back and said, okay, if they don't know what Sales Navigator is, we have a problem. We have to go back to the basics.
Yeah.
Right. So, and Microsoft need to do some work, and LinkedIn need to do some work to educate there as well.
Yeah, and I think it is. Yeah, I agree. It's a powerful tool. If you are in a sales or in channel development of any kind and not have that tool, it's an essential resource. I mean, LinkedIn, one thing has, and as you know, because we talked about it, I proudly touted the fact I've been there since the beta of that. I'm actually LinkedIn member number 5,661. And so it was, right there at the beginning of it. My blog actually, I think I mentioned this to you. So it was 15 plus years ago that I started that, was actually started because I had been accepted into a doctoral program, and I was going to go get my PhD in social informatics, focusing on collaboration technology. And I started the blog to catalog social platforms, and there were a number of them back in the day, and was there at the beginning of LinkedIn, and met Reid Hoffman a couple times, had him come speak at some events, and so just been very passionate about the space, and very happy with the fact that they have stayed the course with being that professional business focused network, and not gone towards the consumer chasing after wild membership numbers. Right. User numbers just to tout that out to the industry. No, they went for, they've got the numbers now. I mean, I don't know what the latest is, but it is the business, social networking platform. And so for a salesperson now, it is essential to have these tools. Right.
But don't just have the tools. Make sure you have a proper profile, and make sure you're completed. That again was something we talked about in my session. So at the end of the day, those are the key things to being successful out there. I mean, again, I was an early adopter with LinkedIn as well. And I always go back, and I know someone else said to me at some point, the word social selling those words are going to disappear. We'll evolve to something else.
It's just selling,
Right. At the end of the day I remember using LinkedIn and doing social selling when it first came out, because that's how I was using it way back before the terminology was here.
Well, so I would argue maybe this is how we can wrap it up too, is the differences between, if there are, between social selling and like the account-based marketing around that. Because my argument is that they are one and the same. That is just a refinement. And there may be some other specific activities and campaigns based around that. But it all starts from that same idea of social selling.
Right. No, I agree. I'm with you.
Somebody comes in, looks at your site, and you say, who is this person? And then say like, okay, who else do I know? Oh, hey, I know a dozen people from that company in the various roles, but I don't know this person who came in and downloaded our ebook on this topic. And so now I realize they're in this industry. I know these people. I might reach out to that person and say, hey, I know you just visited our site. I'm good friends with these 3 people. I'm connected through another 8 or 9 people within your company. I know your space. Here's some content that you might find interesting. You download that ebook, but this white paper that we did on your industry may be of interest to you. And I mean, it's not going to be all at once, but just as an example of that is social selling.
Yep.
In my mind, but it is also this, account-based marketing, going and developing a strategy and,
Yep.
for that company.
I believe, if I remember rightly, the stats, something like 6.8 people are involved in each sale.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's an amazing number of people. So at the end of the day, if you can connect to, well, we'll say you have to connect to at least 6 of them. I don't know how you can connect to 0.8 people, but let's say you connect to 6 of them.
You connected to that one whole person, but you kind of you weren't entirely into
right,
it.
You're not really connected to them. They don't have a picture. That's what it is.
That's right. That's right.
On their profile.
It's like here in the U.S. for those that are like, maybe they do other countries, but like my house that we bought here was listed as 95% complete. And that was a storage room in the basement that there's no carpet or sheetrock. They didn't finish it intentionally because once you 100% complete the build, the taxes go slightly higher.
Yep.
So if it's partially developed, it's this like known thing. Of course, we didn't finish it either. So, but it's a legal legit thing. It's a loophole that's out there. But
so I think but again, like you said, at the end of the day, social selling can help you, but you also don't forget, I think, is go right back to where we started, where we were talking about connections, right? Connect to someone, it might open that door. You may be connected to 1 or 2. Someone else you're connected to may help you connect to the 3rd or the 4th person that's at that company. Don't also forget, other people in your company may also be connected to people that can open those doors as well. So that's the whole piece about social selling as well. That's it's not always about the first, it's who else is first or second that can open those doors. And I think that's the big pieces as well. So
and that's something that actually, in my experience, we talked about the spammers that are just sending these generic as soon as you connect to them. But it used to be the issue, and maybe something happened programmatically. LinkedIn changed it, but I was getting all of these in-mails, that were from no idea. They were trying to sell through that model. I can't say that was ever successful. So instead, that try to connect directly, because maybe they've limited more of that.
No, I mean, there's people out there that still use email. I think don't think of it. It's no different if you think about it than sending a regular email, right? They're trying to get that attention of your audience. If you can get that right attention or that right email or in-mail, you can have that possible. But I think at the end of the day, it goes back to, before you send it, you probably want to have done some of your groundwork before, right? You just don't want to go out and spam everyone first. You probably want to try to, again, go back to what we just talked about earlier on, which was, okay, did I try to interact with that person's comments or articles, and then I start, maybe that's the way I interact with an email or something else. So I'm not just going in blind or cold, however you want to word that. So when they do see it, it's not the first time they've heard from you, right? So I think that's a problem. And there are organizations out there that are helping people with emails, and I think that's a problem. But how many times do you get emails from, we won't call it spamming, but emails that you see the title and you just delete it, even if you don't, right? I think it's the same principle. But there's others that you might just open or you just quickly view that maybe do grab your attention. So I think it's a little bit on a par, but maybe not fully. But I think if you did a little bit more engaging beforehand, those will be a little bit more successful.
I remember when my undergrad, so I actually have degrees in marketing, and just, it was a long time ago. One of my first marketing classes, so over 34 years ago, and was this?
So when you were 14? when you were 14. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. That's right. The but it was I'm trying to remember what the number was. I mean, it's not that important, but it was something like there are like 5 to 7 marketing touches before a purchase. Well, that number now is like 18 to 22 touches through multiple medias and sometimes involving multiple contact points around that. And that's why social selling and understanding, at least beginning to start to map out the attribution, to know where you're being most effective, what channels, what tools,
right,
what keywords, what topics are relevant, what roles and customer journeys, all those things that play into that, that sale. So you understand, so then you can take what's working and more quickly adapt and for that next client who might go on a completely different path, but having been through that experience, you start to better recognize what's working, what's not, what's going to answer these questions and close the gap. Fewer touches before that sale.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think that's really the key there, isn't it? It's, at the end of the day, it's getting into the mind of the customer before they realize it.
Yep.
Because again, we go back to that old stat that we keep hearing that 60%, what was it? 60% of customers already know more about you before they touch you. So we got to get into their mindset beforehand. And again, social selling is a big part of helping with that. And so is some other elements as well. But
that's why, and this is a completely different topic, and why it is so important that because the internet never forgets that you also conduct yourself professionally wherever you have a footprint.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just saying to those, especially those youngsters who are have some very interesting profiles out there. It's all retrievable from it. Well, John, hey, appreciate your time today. And how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach you?
A couple ways. You can find me out on my website, marketingmonarchs.com, or you can reach out to me directly, Jon.Rivers, and that's Jon.Rivers at Marketing Monarchs. And then, of course, you can find me on social media as well.
Of course, I've heard that, yes.
Yeah, I think we were somewhere, there's something called Twitter. And I have a couple handles out there, Jon_Rivers. That's my personal account that's pretty active. And then I have my company one, Branding Noise. But, and of course, I think I have a little profile on LinkedIn as well.
LinkedIn as well. And I would just tell everybody, it's like if you'd like to connect with John or I via LinkedIn, a little personal note saying, hey, I just saw this video, the Digital Sack Lunch that you did, John and Christian, and would love to connect and with you. And I think we can work together. Like those are all great messages.
Exactly. Just say where you found us, heard us. It's always a good one. That way, at least, then we don't put you into the spam box.
And then don't immediately send an obviously cut and paste spam trying to sell us on product or service. Wait a few days.
You can send Christian something about developing apps. That's okay for me.
I just say wait a couple days. Let's get again the wine, dine, take me to dinner, and tell me you love me before I'm able to commit to that. So, well, John, I really appreciate your time. It was great seeing you in Vegas and great seeing you online. And
appreciate it. All right, thanks a lot.